let's get something straight right off the bat. I'm not saying that your friends, family members, or whoever is your accompanying driver are not good drivers, but they drive instinctively since they've been doing it for so many years. So they might not know exactly how to teach you some things properly, and they're sometimes not fully aware of new laws, regulations, and especially requirements at the exam since they got their license so long ago. Some mistakes they might do regularly and see as not very important are not coming to a complete stop at stop signs. I mean, you only need to spend a few seconds at any intersection to see how people deal with stops. Not coming to a complete stop before turning right at a red light. Not respecting speed limits, especially in lower speed zones like parks or school zones. Not checking the blind spots before turning, especially when turning right. People usually don't see the point of it since there won't be any car between them and the sidewalk, but there could be other road users. Not holding the steering wheel with both hands, not turning into the first available lane, and so on. Even though these things might seem very trivial to a lot of people in everyday life driving, they're very important at the exam. Sometimes they might even encourage you to not respect some of those things, especially when people behind you are getting impatient. When you're driving in a driving school car, people understand that you'll respect the code by the book. But if you're driving a normal car, they might wonder why you're driving at 30 in a 30 kilometers an hour zone, or stop completely at stop signs, which is exactly what you're supposed to do, but they might get impatient and put some pressure on you. And your accompanying driver might become impatient as well and tell you to just hurry up. Now, for those who already had the experience of driving with an accompanying driver, usually a family member like mom or dad, or husband or wife, you probably didn't have a very pleasant experience. Something that I've experienced a lot when teaching driving, and I now read it in the comments a lot too, is that your accompanying driver is always yelling at you. Unfortunately, that seems to be the norm for a lot of people, but it's especially true of wives and girlfriends practicing with their husbands or boyfriends. I've known some of them that were paying for lots of extra courses, and when I suggested to them to practice more with their husbands or boyfriends instead, it would be cheaper, their answer was that could be a cause for separation. Some accompanying drivers tend to get impatient at every little mistake, and the reason for that is they've been driving for so long that everything has become instinctive for them. To them, some of the mistakes you do should be so obvious to you, but a lot of times they aren't. When I started teaching driving, I'd have the same reaction too. Students would do a mistake and I couldn't understand why they did it. But after seeing 10, 50, 100 students making the same mistake, I thought, okay, this might be normal after all. An experienced driving teacher has had hundreds of students in their life, so they'll usually anticipate the mistakes and be more patient. Your mom and dad, they've probably only had 1, 2, 3 students in their life, so they might have forgotten what are some normal mistakes for a beginner, even if they did them themselves when they were starting out. When somebody's been doing something for so long, they do it without thinking about it too much. Think about tying your shoes. If you had to explain to someone today how to tie their shoes, you'd probably need to deconstruct the whole process since you've been doing it for so long on autopilot. You don't consciously think about the steps involved. That's also the reason why they'll have a hard time showing you things like parking. It'll usually go something like this. Okay, now turn your wheel to the right, now reverse, now turn it to the left, reverse, and so on. But they won't tell you how much to turn it, how you should be aligned when you need to start turning it, and so on. They're so used to it that they do it visually. Even I don't park the way I show you in my videos. I show you the easiest way, but I do it my own way. In time, you'll do it your way too. And talking about vision, that's the most important thing when driving, and it's the thing that most of the times your accompanying drivers won't mention. I remember when I started teaching driving, my boss told me, I want you to put a special emphasis on vision because that's the single biggest problem with students. I couldn't understand what she meant. I was like, what do you mean? You make sure to keep your eyes open and you drive. That's all, isn't it? It took me a while to realize that most students tend to turn too wide because they're looking at the sidewalk when turning. They react too late because they're looking too closely or staring at the vehicle in front. They swerve in their lane because they're looking at the lines to guide themselves, and so on. Most accompanying drivers will just tell you to turn the steering wheel more when turning, when in fact, the source of the problem is not your hands, it's your eyes. You're not looking at the right place. But they don't notice that because again, they just do it instinctively. Like I said earlier, Driving with an accompanying driver probably won't be the most pleasant of experiences, but you should still do it because you should get as much practice as possible. There's not much I can recommend but to try to stay as calm as possible, which is easier said than done. If they don't want to make you practice, just ask them to pay for your extra courses. That might make them change their minds. Try both to make compromises. These are stressful situations, but if your own family or friends won't help you, who will? You can watch my previous video on driving as a learner for more info, and I'll soon make a video specifically on vision too. So be nice to your accompanying driver, stay safe, and thanks for watching.